With workforce services, we have been tasked, or in the purpose of the moderate income housing plan is really defined here in this bill, is to meet the needs of people that are living at various income levels, that are living, working, or desire to live and work within your community. I think we have used an example during the course of the commission work and as we've been talking to different stakeholders, why housing is important. We mentioned earlier today in the panel just before our break, talked about the need for workforce housing. I think one example is we have a desire, as you guys are doing your planning, your general plan, looking at your community and what sort of economic development you want to have happen within your community, we would love for housing to be a part of that conversation so that the industry and the employers that you're bringing into to do business in your community, you also have a housing plan to house the workforce and the employees that will work within that industry. And so that is why it is important and the purpose of having a housing plan as part of your general plan. As we talk about this, I think it's important that we all are working on a common definition. Moderate income housing is defined in the bill as housing occupied or reserved for households with a gross income at or below 80% of AMI. We also look at, as you guys present your plans, we're going to ask you to have projections for housing that meets 30, 50, and 80% of AMI within your communities. I'm going to turn the time over to David Fields, who is he's a program specialist within our division, and he has been tasked and has the assignment to be a resource and to work with all of the moderate income housing plans and to help you guys. He'll be a resource, but he'll also be the person that's tasked with coordinating our effort in reviewing the plans once they come to us. One thing I did want to mention is we go throughout this presentation, the Senate Bill 34 provided rulemaking authority to the department to establish administrative rule on the evaluation process of the moderate income housing plans. This is something that we are in the initial stages of drafting. We are working with our Attorney General representative within our department. We're also working with different stakeholders and with community partners to develop what this administrative rule will look like. It is not something that we can pass out to you today, but we're going through the rest of our presentation. It's going to outline what we want to include in that rule. The way the administrative rulemaking process works is that it will be posted and it will be open for a 30-day public comment period. During that time, when that closes, then 15 days later, then it will become effective. We're hoping to have all of that done and effective by mid to end July, so that you guys will have all of the final tools and resources and the statute that outlines how we're going to be evaluating your plans. So today, everything we're presenting is still in draft form. And know that as soon as it's finalized, we'll get that sent out to you guys through, through the league and make sure that you have all the updated information. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to David Fields from our office.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. My name is David Fields. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm with DWS, and like Rebecca said, when you guys are implementing your 5-year general plans, I will be your go-to person, and for every year after that. So again, for any of you who want to get in touch with me, please spend some time afterwards and I can give you some information because I don't have business cards yet, but I would like to give you my information. Excuse me. So starting off, come December 1st of 2019 per SB 34, you're going to have your moderate income housing plan, which shows a detailed plan or a detailed analysis of how your community is going to establish housing for those who are at 80, 50, and 30% AMI, adjusted for inflation. And then once you've submitted your general plan or your moderate income housing plan for 5-year estimates, you're going to have to check up annually every year after that, December 1st. So every year after that is going to be an annual review of how you're doing with respect to your 5-year plan. Now I'll show you what that entails. So like I said, Submission is going to be December 1st. So for your 5-year general plan per SB 34, it's going to be submitted December 1st of 2019. And then, like I said, for every year after that, which is an annual checkup on how your 5-year plan is doing, again, December 1st will be that due date. So what does the general plan entail? Well, like we said, it's going to state 3 to 4 specific policy goals that will be included in your plan. And for those of you that have a transit center, you have a 4th element, which we'll discuss your transportation needs and how housing is surrounded by that. And for those of you who would like more information on what those specific implementation items are, the Utah League of Cities and Towns was very kindly to print it off, and it's on page 5 and 6 of this handout. Now, don't be confused that there is a number 2 up in the right-hand corner. It's not the second page, it's page 5. Trust me. Okay. So what does this entail? So you're going to choose 3 to 4 strategic policy prescriptions to include in your plan. Again, we're talking about the 5-year general plan, not the annual review, but the 5-year general plan. Okay? So you're going to list specific outcomes that you want to accomplish. Okay? You're going to describe how your community is going to implement it and how you're going to monitor it to make sure that you are setting your goals and completing them. Okay? Describe what resources are going to be used and allocated efficiently to ensure that your plan is successful. Okay? And then set target dates on how you're going to complete the goal with respect to this 5-year general plan. Okay? And finally, don't hesitate to mention what possible barriers could be in place for establishing this plan and completing it successfully. Because again, nothing's perfect. So just be honest and say what barriers are there, and then ask for resources, ask for help, and how we can remove those barriers. Like this person right here is giving you this presentation. So then what comes next? Annual reporting. Now, in the past, this used to be biannual, but now it's annual. Okay? Keep in mind, it's annual, and the deadline for submitting this annual progress report, which it is, it's a progress report, is December 1st. So unlike in the past where you had biannual reporting, which was due in July, no longer. It's December 1st of every year, annual checkup, which is a checkup on your 5-year general plan with respect to housing. Okay? Now, this is similar, but a little bit different with respect to your 5-year, because again, it's a progress report. And what does this progress report entail? Well, it's a review of your moderate income housing, like I said. And you're going to report how you've been doing. Have you been able to complete your goals? Have you been able to allocate your resources effectively? Have barriers been shown up during the process of implementing said 5-year general plan, which you did not see beforehand? And why did those barriers come up? And have you been able to overcome them? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And then once you have these findings, you're going to report them to us, the Housing Community Development Division of DWS, your area organization of governments, and your metropolitan organization and various other organizations that's helping you or assisting you with your 5-year general plan. Okay? Again, moreover, what does reporting consist of? Well, how have you been doing with your set goals in your 5-year general plan? Were they too lofty? Were they able to be achieved quite soon? And if not, why? Why are some goals still taking longer to be reached? Were some just too outrageous that you couldn't do? Well, explain why. Okay? And with that, as a corollary, what tasks have been completed? What tasks weren't able to be completed? Why? Do you need more resources? Do you need more connections? Were there a sudden change in circumstances with respect to your municipality? For instance, where there was a drastic change in housing prices overnight. I'm not saying that would happen, but maybe something like that did happen. What caused it? And also, explain why certain outcomes didn't come out the way they did. For instance, outcomes that deviated from said goals. What happened? Which is related to what I said before, were there sudden circumstances that just became too out of hand or too out of your control, that results were not what you expected? And did you seek assistance in responding to those deviated results? And if not, what are still problems, and maybe you need more outside resources to respond to that? Any questions thus far on reporting? Okay. So now where do you go to find out where you can access? Now, mind you, we're still in the process of drafting the 5-year general plan for you to use when, like I said, drafting your 5-year plan. And the annual progress report, there's still drafts. But nevertheless, we still have draft documents which I can provide you if you would like some assistance. But in the future, where are you going to be able to find this? Well, you're going to go to housing.utah.gov, which is our website. And then you're going to click on this link right in the right-hand corner, okay, where it says affordable housing. Okay? You're going to click on affordable housing. And then you're going to go to the left-hand side of our website. And once you're there, where we circled moderate income housing. Okay? And once you click on moderate income housing, you're going to click next on reporting. And then where we have it circled, there are 2 links. The first one is where you have your moderate income housing reports. This is where you'll have, like I said, the requirements for your 5-year plan and for your annual progress report. Now, this begs the question, if I have all that I need, how can I even make an estimate of my housing needs? For instance, what are my ratios of those who are at or below 30, 50, 80% AMI adjusted for inflation with respect to your population? Well, that's why we had the 5-year housing calculator. Okay? And this is a mechanism for you to calculate those results. Now, the data that's used right now is CHAS data from HUD, which is based on the American Community Survey. And if you have more questions about that, I'd be more than happy to answer for you about that data and the analytics that are used. But it's the American Community Survey, which is a collaboration between the Census Bureau and HUD, which gets a general idea of what the housing costs, housing needs, trend dynamics, wage dynamics, etc., for all regions across the United States, then disaggregated based on municipality. Okay. Now, going back, what does a moderate income housing 5-year implementation form look like? Well, here it is. And like I said, it's a draft. It's a work in progress. Okay. But it's going to ask you general questions like, please describe the targets of your goals. What are your specific goals? When do you intend to complete such goals? What are your resources? What implementation items are you going to choose based off of, like I said, the list that was in this handout? Okay, which is based on SB 34, by the way. And again, like I said before, if you have a transportation node, you can't just pick 3, you got to pick 4. Okay. Any questions on this? Now, keep in mind, this is just a draft. This is not finalized. We still have some more review, some more editing, but I want to give you an idea of what you're going to have to submit for the next 5 years. Okay. Once you've submitted your 5-year plan, which sets out your agenda for meeting affordable housing, you're going to have an annual progress report, like I said. And this is how a form what's going to look like, which is going to generally ask you how you've been doing. Okay? Detail specifically how you've been doing. And detail specifically where things might have gone awry and why. And I'm sorry this is out of order, but going back to the 5-year projection calculator, which discusses or actually is a tool for you to calculate your housing needs. This is it. Okay? And when you access it, it's a spreadsheet in an Excel program where you have different buttons to add your data and make your calculations accordingly, which is, again, based on CHAZ data, American Community Survey, published by HUD and the Census Bureau. And for those of you who would like some more information on what CHAZ data is and where you can find more information about it, more like the variables that are chosen, you can go to huduser.gov. And it tells you everything you need to know about what CHAZ data is, how it's used, when it's conducted. So again, it's based on the annual American Community Survey, which I think is done, well, if it's annual, it's done every year. So yeah, it's annual. But sometimes, yeah. So it's American Community Survey annual, which most recently is 2018 CHAZ data, I think. So. And for the final conclusion of our presentation, I'm going to turn it back to Rebecca.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we're going to give Meg some time to talk about resources, but within our office, you have Dave, myself, and we also have a housing programs manager, Shelly Glines. This is our contact information. We are anxious and excited to help you guys as you navigate through this process. With the reporting form that Dave was talking about, I think our goal is for you guys to determine what goals that you want to set within your own community. And we want you to tell us the metrics on how you're going to measure your progress towards that goal and what your desired outcome is. And then this annual progress report is we just want to check in and see how you're doing. We do not anticipate that you will have fully implemented all of your goals and be done and ready within the first year. It really is a progress report to let us know what you're, how you're progressing towards your 5-year goal. But then we will take the report form and we will ask that you guys complete and turn into us. And we will use that to evaluate that you have completed the required tasks, that you have completed the statutory requirements. And then we will provide that information to the Department of Transportation as part of their eligibility requirements for the transportation funds. So that is the link between the housing goal into the accessibility of the transportation funds. It really comes through our office. We met as recently as yesterday afternoon with a network of stakeholders to talk about how do those different interactions work and connect. And we're still working on that and trying to figure that out. And so as we get final information, as we get final documents, like I said, we will continue to share that with you. We just don't have all of the answers today, which I'm sorry if that's what you were expecting, but we are anxious for your feedback and to have you guys tell us what would be most helpful for you. I'm going to turn the time over to Meg for a little bit and talk about some of the resources that they're working on developing. Before I do, it looks like Tony has a question.
Just one quick question. So before you turn it in, though, you have to have the department head sign off on it and the council?
Yes. Yep. Before you turn in your plans, you do have to have it approved. You'll post it on your website and also give a copy of it to the AOG or your MPO.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good morning. Meg Ryan with the League of Cities and Towns. Going to talk to you quickly about two things, but first I want to see all the elected officials. Show of hands, please. Okay, and staff. Okay, elected officials, I'm targeting this to you because ultimately the buck stops with you. Staff, obviously, you're going to have to, as you always do, communicate this to them. But ultimately, the legislative body, you guys adopt the general plan. So what we're asking you to do with this immediate sort of threshold of timing is to look at your moderate income housing plan and make sure that you meet the latest statutory requirements. I love the fact that there was a big unanimous show of hands that you all have moderate income housing plans because that's already been required. All we're doing here is asking you to look at it again and provide some more information. So ultimately, Planning Commission, if you are going to update that or modify the moderate income housing plan, they need to hold a public hearing, and then it comes up to the legislative body to ratify You can hold a hearing, but you're not required to. You can have it just in a meeting format. So that's procedurally, my elected officials, what you need to do. You may already be set. Some of you had mentioned that you're already looking at what we call the menu items to implement. And so that's my message to elected official. Resources. So there's a lot in the weeds here, but we have so many resources to help you. Ultimately, it's your general plan, you draft it, you adopt it. But like Rebecca said, they have a wealth of information on their site. What we're planning to do, besides the training that Rachel mentioned on Saturday, which will be part 2 of this. We talked today about policy, about why. We've given you some resources, and we're going to talk more about implementation with developers here, the sort of on-the-road implementation. But this training that we have on Saturday is really going to show you not only the data that you can have or access to look at for complying with the statute, but also the policy decisions, as well as your general planning, right? We all do this general plan. This bill, in my mind, really takes what we already do, which is good planning, land use, housing, transit, and it kind of melds them all together and say, let's look at this again with a fresh set of eyes as we know that growth is coming toward our state. And how are we going to meet this growth? And as they've mentioned today, locally, right? That's what that bill does. You have the local decision to decide what options are best for you. And we're here to help you guide through that policy piece. As the gentleman mentioned, the biggest thing for the elected officials is the citizenry. And we're cognizant of that, and there is no magic bullet. I think if any of us had a magic bullet of how to get through this, we wouldn't be here, because we'd be on the circuit nationwide. It's a nationwide issue, a nationwide problem, but we have strategies, thoughts, discussion. We're all going to have to get there collectively to figure out how to implement these things. But the nice flexibility of the bill is that it's not a one-size solution. Right? And a lot of you may have already been doing some of these things, because as I mentioned before, it's good planning. So resources, the league website, we are developing now a one-stop shop housing page that will link to all of these resources, because not only do we have the housing component, but the transportation component. How many of you know if you have a fixed guideway public transit stop? Oh, good. Okay, we'll have maps that show you that list all the cities, thanks to our great partners at WFRC. Employment projections, population projections, we'll also have a link to that. Okay, we're really trying to drill down some of the requirements that have been asked of you and put the resources there for you. And we'll also have other links to items where you can get help.
We have an ADU booklet. We also have a housing policy, which talks about some of those concepts for implementation.
With a couple of best case practices at the back. We're also working, I know University of Utah is doing kind of a sampling of what different folks are doing. And again, if any of you heard my training, you can't just blueprint what worked one place for your community, but it gives you an idea and a sampling of what processes may work. So that's what we're going to be have for you. This goes in effect tomorrow, I believe. Is that correct? We updated, and we will have resources and keep feeding those resources for you. And anything you want to share to help the collective in this process, also please come to us and let us know, and we can help get those stories out as well. So we appreciate your efforts, and we'll turn it back. I guess, are we finished, Craig? Would you like to take it? Rebecca? Okay.
I'm curious from you guys. We've talked about resources that we anticipate sharing. I'm curious from you all, what do you need? Yes.
Just a thought and a question. It seems that previously the definition of moderate income housing has been squarely focused on the 80% of AMI. The definition now of at or below 80% AMI and the increasing focus on the 30 and the 50 seems to suggest anything below 80, but the title seems to still focus on the moderate. And so it seems to be an expanding, somewhat moving, expanding target. I heard reference earlier today of limited state funding that would likely be prioritized towards the 30 and the 50, and that's certainly consistent with, I think, what I'm hearing in the room and our findings in Layton City, that the market, I think, can deliver moderate, and even right at the target without being cost burdened, a 2-bedroom townhome or renting in a very nice new apartment, multifamily apartment complex. That's the 30% of income. They could stretch their income into the cost burden to 40-50% and maybe get into the 3-bedroom townhome, closer to $300,000 in Layton now. And so I think zoning and letting the market and channeling the appropriate locations in centers and corridors and with transit, that makes a lot of sense. But then determining how to subsidize the 50 and the 30, I think, is a big challenge. And it leaves open the question, is it resources available through state, federal? Is it a required inclusionary element? And then that's a conversation between local governments and developers and the investment side. So the 30 to 50 is, I think, a whole new kind of range of territory to explore, and leaves a lot of questions that we'll have to find answers to.
Yeah. I think that's well said. I do believe that it is the moderate income housing requirement, but as you look at your gap analysis and where we have the gap in affordable housing at the 30 and 50%, you have a more significant gap there, and so I think that is where a lot of the discussion around affordable housing is taking place. Like, how are we going to help minimize and shrink that gap? I'm curious, so from his question, are there any cities that have some advice for him? Not at all? Do you guys feel the same sentiment, or? All right, Tara has some advice.
On my own city over here. Well,
I just want to put the 30 to 50% into perspective, because the 30 to 50% are our tourist workers, they're our service workers, they're the ones who are working in hospitals. So we need this housing. So when you're thinking about 30% of AMI, it really hits our other workforce that really produces a lot of our economy here. So
I think I also wanted to add, when you talked about available funding and resources as you develop your strategies, I believe if you look at the menu of options, it does talk about, let me look, starting with like P and Q, apply for or partner with an entity that applies for state and local tax incentives, that works with the Utah Housing Corporation, partnering with an entity that applies for affordable housing programs with Department of Workforce Services and Only Walker. And so that can be some of your strategies as you're identifying what are some of those resources and availability build into your plans, is how to partner with entities that can apply for and access those funding to help meet what you're trying to do.
Which will only go so far.
Which will only go so far. You're correct. You're correct. We do not have unlimited funds for this, and so you are right in that.
And just to say, I think you're right on. I mean, but to clarify, the statute has always looked at 80 and below. So it's just more now in the needs analysis, identifying that gap. And I think again, when you look at what your adjusted median income, it's all going to be different. And so as Tara mentioned, in some areas that'll be a police officer. When we looked at the Salt Lake County, they're at like 50% of AMI. It all depends on what your wages and where your income is for that area. But the bottom line is, it absolutely is going to take partnerships for the lower end of the scale. And in the policy book, we have some examples of some cities that have gone to one extreme with intervention. My friend Gary Crane from Layton always says that's not going to be solved without government intervention, right, Gary? Is that your tag phrase? And that's what he likes to say, and I think that's the case, and it takes partnerships. But it's a range of housing opportunities, and we like to say cradle to grave. Like, how are you providing that transition in your community, and what are the strategies for that? So there isn't a magic bullet, except for that there has to be a partnership with that at that level. That's just the economics of it.
What other comments, suggestions? I guess my initial question was, what other resources do you need to be successful in implementing? Yes.
This isn't a question, answer to your question, but what is the AMI number? What is the adjusted median income? What is that? What is the adjusted median income number right now? And is it by each city or is it statewide?
By each city, each municipality. What's the range? It's by each municipality.
Based on each municipality?
Yes.
Okay, so we can go into the website and find that number.
And you
that's
can
the
do it in the
number.
Chase data and the 5-year housing calculator. You could certainly find it.
And then we can find it there.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
By county or city?
By county. Yep. Any other questions, comments? Tara. You're running from one end of the room to the other. Thank you.
I just want to point out another resource that's available. So if you went to the National Low Income Housing Coalition's website, the Out of Reach report, it breaks down every county and tells you how many hours a person needs to work at minimum wage to afford a place in your area, as well as how much it costs to afford a 2-bedroom. So right now in the state, it's $17.77 an hour. That will be changing next month when we get the new report. But also in that report, if you go on, you'll show a map. If you go down to the bottom, there's a place where you can put your zip code in, and it will horn right in on the zip code. And so, it's a really good website to go and be familiar with, but also when you're talking to people or doing a presentation, you can actually have some really, great data that way as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes. Other side of the room, of course, for you. Sorry, sir.
You mentioned in one of her slides a list of resources that were available, and a few other have been mentioned this morning. Can someone at the league provide a nice summary list of the various resources and just send it out to this group?
Yeah, I don't work for the league, but yeah, they'll do it. I will help them.
That's what our one-page housing stop resource page on our website is going to be, and we'll keep adding to it. So we're trying to put all of these resources for you in a cohesive fashion. It's a work in progress, so we're not quite there yet, but we started with our publications and with the actual Senate bill, and we'll be adding to it in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Great suggestion. Any other comments, suggestions? How we can best help? You look like you're about to say something.
So I know that's a bit of a moving target and you have a draft outline. Is there an estimated time of when you're going to be done? Or if you can't answer that, it would be great if we get contacted by the league or our MPO when that's done so we can meet your deadlines.
My goal is to have that all finalized and everything done by mid-July. But I do think, it is pretty, I don't know if you can see, but it is pretty basic. Really what we want you to report back on is what was your goal? What strategies did you have in place? What's the progress? And then we'll use that same report form as our evaluating form. But yep, I hope to have that midsummer.
And during the interim, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, qualms, any of it, I'm more than happy to assist. So just contact me. I'd be more than willing to assist you in any question that you have.
Any last final thoughts? Great. Thank you for your time. We're excited to partner with you guys and available. Like I said, I hope you captured our phone numbers and email addresses. If we don't know the answer, we will definitely get you connected to the right person within our office to get that information for you. Thank you.